Mike, great to see you.
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you carving out some time. So, you and I were talking on background just a little bit about some key industry trends and key things that MSPs and channel partners should be thinking about in their businesses. But before we get to that, for the rare partner who doesn't know who you are and what you're up to at Sherweb, tell us a little bit about your focus.
Well, I wouldn't say rare. I mean, I still go to conferences and people are like, "Who are you and what do you do?" So but I'm glad you think that, Joe.
Yeah.
My name is Mike Slater. I'm the head of sales for the channel marketplace, which encapsulates our distribution portfolio. It's everything from Microsoft to Proofpoint, Acronis, Trend Micro, all those great security solutions. Basically, distribution to MSPs.
Okay, got it. Okay. And cloud marketplace. Are there particular trends that pertain to that as we're recording this on July 19th, 2022? As you think about key trends and how that's affecting your partners, what are you looking at in the market right now?
Of course, well, the biggest thing I'm looking at, and honestly, everybody's looking at it, is labor shortage issues, right? So I'm getting tired of living in historical times. I'm sure you are too. That's as the saying goes. But we definitely seen like a major labor impact. I'm sure people are in the know, but Microsoft just announced very recently, about a month ago, they're going to do a 25% increase in their salaries, right, for their staff for this year. And of course, Microsoft has a lot of enterprise clients. They need to support those enterprise clients by drawing up talent. So as they hire and grow their business, it pulls out of different resources, be it MSPs, be it distribution, be it other vendors, right? And it creates a gap, right? Because a lot of these MSP techs in particular then go work for in-house IT, they go and work for vendors, right, in the program. They go to a bunch of different places. Not so much Sherweb because we have a bilateral non-solicit agreement, but other people do take them, which is very much the truth. So that's one of the biggest things we're seeing is, how do you do less with more? And how do you partner up to reduce that impact on your business in a time where hiring is not just putting up a Kijiji ad or hiring your, niece, nephew to do work for you? That's not a business idea you can do anymore. So how is that changing? That's a big impact. Another thing we're seeing a lot is the cybersecurity impact as well too. So not just the standard stuff everybody thinks of, like, oh, I need to have EPP or antivirus, right? Those are all table stakes. I'm talking about things like cybersecurity insurance, right? Because MSPs now need to be liable in some cases for some contracts, right? Especially they deal with government, municipal, state, provincial, if you're in Canada like us. Those are starting to become very interesting topics, right? How are you prepared for kind of cybersecurity 2.0, right? Where you need to be prepared by default to do stuff. I mean, that's an amazing thing where not everybody was cloud. COVID caused like 5 years of digital transformation to happen in about a year. And now what are we going to do about it? That's kind of the situation we're in. And the last trend I'm kind of seeing that's very interesting is kind of the remote working stuff. So both negative and positive. We're seeing a lot of places just deal with the reality of distributed workforces. I mean, people, they're just here like we are, Joe. We've been doing this for a long time remote, right? It's not an unusual thing. But there's a lot of new industries and new verticals where, being in the office was standard. And there's nothing I've seen this way where like that normal has changed for a lot of skilled workers. People aren't going back in the office, or if they do, it's a couple of days a week. And places that are implementing those changes and force people to go in the office are finding themselves losing employees now, right? So that's caused a massive impact to the way MSPs are working. A lot of our MSP partners are even reducing their office footprint to almost nothing just because of the nature of their business. So that's changing how they deal with vendors, how they're dealing with us, how they're dealing with their customers. It's a massive impact.
Yeah. Listen, I want to double click on each one of those. So you mentioned labor, you mentioned cyber, and you mentioned sort of remote work or this hybrid workforce. Massive trends. And listen, I think you hit the nail on the head. These trends are extending all the way from the enterprises, the Microsofts of the world, down to the SMB, and everyone is sort of, I hate to use the term inflection point because it's not one moment in time, it's an ongoing inflection point where I think the partners watching this really have to take a concerted look of how they're going to manage labor long-term, cyber long-term, remote work long-term. So let's start with labor. How are you helping out on the labor front? What are the partners asking you for, and what are you delivering there?
Yeah, so for us, it's interesting. So we actually made a very strategic acquisition. I don't want to say accidentally because everything we do kind of does have purpose, and we saw value in it before. But just around before the COVID labor shortage started, we actually acquired a company called GMS, right, which is Global Mentoring Solutions, which is an outsourced help desk solution for MSPs. The timing was completely incidental, right? We liked the company, we liked what they did. They had a great customer base, great team. We bought them because their average tech had 16 certs per person. So to augment our support team it made a lot of sense at the time just to buy it, right? Because Sherweb is a support company. It's not a sales company. It's what we always tell people. If you look at our LinkedIn, you see a lot more support titles than you do sales titles. Sometimes to my chagrin, I wish I had more salespeople sometimes, right? So, but that's what we do. And then you add in the labor shortage, right? So that perfect timing. Now, it's not that we haven't had people leave either. We have. Everybody has it. So if a vendor tells you they haven't had that, they're lying. So I've run away from them screaming if you're an MSP. They say they haven't had that issue. We all do. But it's allowed us to kind of mitigate some of this for our partners, where they can go and be like, wow, I can't find somebody to do. A common ask is, weekend and night support, right? I have 3 clients that extend after hours that I'm worried about. Can you guys help me out? And we can, like, a per ticket or per person basis for that particular client that you have. So that's been a big thing we've seen, a big surge in, is people outsourcing level 1, level 2. And then there's all the stuff we've always done, right? Like pre-sales. I used to be the director of pre-sales for a while too, before I had this role. And I built a very robust engine. So we got a great way to kind of like not have to hire your own architect. Something I always talk about when I give keynotes or I have discussions around labor is, how much do you think an security architect costs now? The answer, no one ever guesses it right until recently, but because again, they're getting used to the high price of labor. All 6-digit jobs now, every single one of those. Pre-sales architect for IaaS, for security, even for things like modern workplace, like just Microsoft products. It's all hitting 6 digits now in terms of compensation. So it's hard for the average MSP to keep that up unless they have a tremendously large offering in which they're utilizing that person, 20, 30 requests in a week, which most of them aren't, right? It's just the reality of SMB. Right. So you can kind of look for us for that kind of help. And that one's free. You just get that for being a Sherweb partner. And again, I've staffed that thing up to the gills with experts and everything we have.
Got it. Okay. So if I'm an MSP or a channel partner watching this and I think of labor, is it fair to say then, and I think of Sherweb, I'm thinking of things like pre-sale support, NOC support, help desk support, SOC support, things of that nature? Are those sort of the categories we should be talking about? Or am I creating categories and you're saying, no, Joe, that's not where we are?
No, Joe, you got it. You're creating something I forgot, which, much to my counterpart in our MDR team for Ops Protect would probably scold me if you knew I missed that. We even do have some MDR tools as well too, right? Either through vendors, right, that we work with, or our own solution called Ops Protect. It's actually my polo I'm wearing today, as I have a million of these. I haven't worn an actual shirt to work in about 2 years. I just wear Sherweb polos and sweatpants like most people do. But Ops Protect, again, we do have that MDR piece. We can actually monitor your Microsoft tenant. And again, 99% of MSPs that I've met anyway are Microsoft partners, and they have a tenant to worry about, right?
Right.
It is the biggest vector right now in terms of like potential attacks. So we can secure that, put monitoring on your tenant in a couple of clicks, right? So it's, again, security is a journey. There's things you do, and this is a quick, easy way to just add another layer and get it up and running in 5 minutes, right? So I'd say that's also a big thing too, is that SOC MDR part. How is that going, right? And then again, XDR through our vendor partners, if that's the next level you want to enjoy, which is again a giant product that could do many things.
Right. Well, that's a perfect segue because we covered labor. We're moving on to the cyber category now. You discussed SOC, you discussed things like EDR, et cetera. So, and you mentioned earlier in the conversation, sort of cyber 2.0. This is more than an antivirus and a backup conversation.
Correct.
How far along are your partners in that journey? Do you feel like they got the 1.0 right, where they're getting the antivirus and the data protection right, and now they're moving into MDR and EDR and things like that through partnerships with you?
Yeah, I'd say that it's kind of an interesting mix of both. So I'd say that largely it comes down to like, what has your past experience been, right? So you have a lot of partners that, again, have very simple businesses that are low attack vectors, right? Like we have a guy that specializes in restaurants. So his partners are overwhelmingly immune to most of that, right? So his thing is like, okay, they have a password manager, they have backup, they have some understanding, but there's no real IP to lose, right? Generally, at the end of the day, all the data they have, they protect. There's maybe a couple of knowledge workers, but everybody's basically a server, right? Or somebody involved in a customer service role. So they roll up frontline protection. So those are great. But then we also know people that are dealing with more knowledge workers, right? It's people that have accounting departments, finance departments, legal departments, right? More of the traditional vectors for these attacks, where they're kind of using very sophisticated phishing campaigns and again, spear phishing directly to people at a rate we've never really seen before. So those people are starting to have that extended thing, right? Where the conversation doesn't come really about prevention, now it becomes about remediation, right? So that's kind of the next stage. And I'd say about half of the partners we deal with are already having that conversation. But I think the other half aren't. Again, just from my real life experience of going to some of these trade shows around security, again, this place is small. We all talk to the same partners for the last 20 years show. It's the same people we see all the time, right? A couple new faces. But I definitely have noticed there are some that are more in the security space now, kind of evolving into that MSSP people that are using the XDR services, people that maybe even have their own SOC, and they buy tools from vendors. People like that, you kind of see that growing, but you still have a large amount of what I call almost like a little bit of laggards, right? Where they're kind of running a little bit behind, and they've mastered that 1.0 of security, but things like cyber insurance aren't on the radar. Things like XDR aren't on the radar. They're basically thinking, well, you know, it hasn't been a problem, so it's not going to be. But again, now the real question is, at least in my opinion, what I'm seeing, and from our security experts, that sure tell me, it's really a matter of when, not if. And that's, I think, one of the major pivots between the 1.0 MSP and the 2.0 MSP in the security conversation.
Got it. Yeah. You know, it's funny. Similar to you, when I think about MSPs and sort of 1.0 and 2.0, I think of a pool, right? And I think of every MSSP is in the deep end of the cyber pool.
Correct.
And every MSP, not every, but most of them are in the shallow end, and they're going to have to figure out the deep end through the partnerships, through alliances. I don't think most will build SOCs. I think they'll need to partner up through a company like a Sherweb, for instance. But you bring up a really great point that I hadn't mentioned so far, and that's cyber insurance. Yeah. And tell me a little bit more there, because the thing I hear is the MSPs are, you know, struggling to provide struggling to find insurance providers. And when they do, it can be a very labor-intensive process to get the insurance. Do you think we're heading in a direction where the workflow automation will get better and MSPs will be able to align more easily with insurance providers, both to protect themselves, but also to maybe extend that insurance out to end customers?
Yeah, so I think it's just such a new market, right? It's like anything else, right? So when something like, because again, cyber insurance or like kind of liability insurance has been a corporate standpoint for enterprise and kind of mid-market clients for years. You know, Sherweb has insurance for this, right? For example, that we do because we're SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant. We have a list of other things that we're achieving to do. We're ever adding to that portfolio. So we're aware of what we have to do as provider. I get asked more often than not, just like, do you guys have proof of what you have? Like, yeah, we do. Obviously, no problem. We can show you. But now that's becoming more of a standard. So we see an increase in the amount of questionnaires where partners are being asked these things like, what does your cyber insurance look like? What's your strategy? What's your awareness, right? How often do you evaluate those things? And that's becoming more of the standard. Now, a lot of the security guys I know in this space, and again, I'm not a security expert. I call myself a security muggle. I know enough to be dangerous to know what's happening. And then I hire really good people that know what they're talking about, which is my strategy. It's never done me wrong. Right. But what I am seeing, though, is that there's going to be an uptick as MSPs are now approaching even just mid-market clients, and like honestly, like 100 seats now. We're starting to see those security questionnaires pull in, right? And they're asking questions to their MSP, to all their providers, being like, what do you guys do for diligence, right? Because they're not only concerned about the technology they buy from Sherweb, they're also worried about what the MSPs are like, right? In terms of that. Like, are you guys regularly changing your passwords? I know you guys tell me a password manager. Do you use one yourself, right? There's that kind of phrase where a plumber's sink sometimes right. the worst, right? And I kind of do agree with that, where I've seen a lot of people maybe don't practice necessarily what they preach because bandwidth, right? They don't have time to do it. So I think that there are some vendors, and I am interested in partnering up with a couple that do this specifically for MSPs. I think that's going to become a thing. So again, Sherweb's always looking at things to their portfolio, and I'm very much something that's on my mind is cyber insurance, something we could possibly broker. Because again, it's like any other brokered service, right? It's like telecom used to be 10 years ago, right? You know, everybody we brought in master agents, and you could buy this from this and this from that. I think the same thing is going to happen with insurance. There already is a broker market for insurance. That's why most people buy it in some places. So I think it is on the way. It's just somebody has to crack that specific recipe. And if anybody's listening that is a vendor for that, come and talk to me. We'd love to have a chit chat.
Fantastic. Okay. So, hey, listen, the final point you raised, I'm sure there's a lot of other items on your mind, but the final point for today that you raised was sort of the remote work, hybrid work, and the trends there. What are you seeing there in terms of how end customers and maybe even the channel partners themselves are navigating remote work, hybrid work, and how are you helping in that process?
Yeah, so I'd say one of the biggest things that we're seeing has been an uptick in like virtualization at desktop is kind of what I'd say really something that affects both the partners and also as well, I would say the end users too. Because what's kind of happening is, you know, hardware delays, right? Again, from you know, all the different things, everybody has a supply chain problem. Sometimes components are 16 months out from ordering, right? So people are basically having to refresh, and cloud's becoming a very interesting option, right? Whether you do it through us, like in our private cloud for servers, whether you want to do it through Azure Virtual Desktop, whether you're interested in Windows 365, right? Which, you know, I've had a lot of conversations with Microsoft personally about how we're going to kind of help the MSP channel with that. Lots of promising stuff to come out this year, I think, following Inspire, which is happening as we speak. There's going to be a lot of interesting components to that, right? So I think that what's kind of happening is we're now getting to a point where like virtualized work environments are becoming very interesting from a security perspective, like levels of control you can have, because you can't beat that, right? If you can literally control the desktop to a point you can just turn it off and turn it on at will, that's a level of control I think a lot of MSPs want. Second thing you're going to have also just availability, right? So if you can't get the components to do it, lease the monthly for somewhere else, right? Especially if it's a big company hitting the 6-year mark on servers, on infrastructure, on hardware, and they know they got to refresh because everything's out of warranty. And if something does break, you're 16 months out from replacement. That's becoming an appealing thing too. So I think that those virtual environments are really where the modern MSP is going to win, because it ties back into the security piece we talked about, and it ties back into availability of parts, right? Which are the two biggest concerns. What can I buy and how can I secure it? And cloud really is a great way to do both right now.
Yeah. And I think the two other pieces that I always think of from the partner vantage point is also how quickly can I activate it and how quickly can I monetize it? And I think the examples you shared solid for those very opportunities for the partners. So great opportunities there. I agree with you. Final question for you. If I'm a partner viewing this, are there some first steps I should take or a particular URL I should check out in terms of potentially working with Sherweb?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing, what I always say conversation-wise, just go to our main website, so w.sherweb.com. You can go in there and you get an idea of everything that we have to offer. And again, it's looks intimidating when you first get on, as you start any journey with anything. But in reality, we have a very trim line of vendors and services that we offer that are all tailored to MSP, right? That's 99% of our partners fit that role. Okay. So everything you see in there is going to help you, whether you're what I call, that at stage one, break fix, right? Trying to transition into an MSP, doing some security 1.0, or whether you're an MSSP looking to really augment and buy solutions to make your next gen SOC. Sherweb kind of has a little bit of everything you're going to need depending on where you are in your journey. So just go and get started there. Talk to your account manager. Talk to me. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Talk to me at a show. I go to almost all of them, unfortunately, for now. So you'll see me there. Let's have that conversation.
Fantastic. Well, I tell you what, Mike, thank you very much for taking some time with me today. I really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks, Joe.